Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for your patience here. We're going to get started now. As you're probably aware from the tweets that were sent out and all the other social media and the invitation that you accepted, we're just going to be talking about AppZero and Server 2008. So somewhat of a continuation from our conversation in our last webinar. And really the focus of what we're talking about here is that not only did Windows 2003 Server come to end of life, but the clock is ticking on Server 2008 as well. So that extended support for all 2008 instances, whether they are the stock standard or the R2 versions, that will be coming to an end in January of 2020. So just really around the corner here. What we're also getting feedback from various partners and clients and customers is that the IT departments themselves that were working through those Windows 2003 migrations, they found that the migration planning and other aspects of those migrations took a lot longer than they thought it was going to take. Buy-in was an issue from the app owners and server owners, and getting coordinated took a lot longer than they thought it was going to. And of course, that added to the costs associated with those migrations. So what we're also hearing and seeing is that a lot of those corporations and the server admins in particular realize that they have about 2 years to create and execute their Windows 2008 remediation plans. So again, that clock is ticking just for those servers that are still considered to be new, right? Even though we have 2012 and 2016 servers readily available for those folks to start using. So what's the opportunity here for you folks that are in the IT and obviously interested in AppZero is a chance to start saving some money, really. We want to start reducing costs associated with man hours and removing your dependency on the CSAs that are out there from Microsoft and move to a more secure OS, right? So 2012 or 2016, which both are supported by AppZero, and include much better security. There are a lot of unknowns within the IT atmosphere and within their community, but one thing we know for sure, especially after the recent attacks of WannaCry and Petra, is that those attacks are going to continue, and they are going to continue to be more sophisticated. We don't know when they're going to happen, but we know they will happen. So what we can really do is leverage migrating to a more supported operating system and gain those security features that are coming down from Microsoft. And the other thing we can do is by leveraging AppZero, not only are we more secure at the end, but we are assisting those folks that are using our product to make their project deadlines significantly more achievable. Again, by reducing those man hours, helping go through and reduce the application dependency on older operating systems. All right, so what we're going to do now is roll into migration. You guys can see how things are working out and make sure that if you have any questions, please utilize the questions dialog box, and we have folks that are monitoring that to be able to assist as we go along. If there's something pertinent, they'll tap me, and then we can address it during the migration itself. So let me see. Right. So what we're doing here is actually an investigation of the source machine itself, right? You can see on screen here, hopefully that's not too small for everyone, that we're looking at the 2008 server. And this instance here is a base installation of .NET Nuke with a SQL Server 2005. We're just doing a rudimentary investigation, again, to make sure we know the various components of the server itself, how the interconnections are, what the website looks like itself, so we have an idea of what to expect on the output side of things. So roughly, you know, it doesn't take too long to go through these steps, but they're critical in terms of being able to know what it is that we're migrating. We want to know those, again, those interconnections and how things are playing out for the application itself. Once the inspection is completed, then we'll move over to our destination server itself. I can put that a little bit larger, full screen for us. All right, so here we are now on our destination server. utilizing the AppZero software to do our migrations. Our first step is to create a container name, and from there, we're going to create our connection back to our source machine. So all of our migrations are really one-to-one. So it's from the destination server to the source machine, pulling that information across, making a copy of the application, its dependencies, and its components on the from the source machine. So you can see we've gone through our pre-checks, and now we're in the midst of selecting the various components that we know we need to bring across. For SQL, obviously, there's quite a few components that we need to bring across, and we're also going to check the web server IIS portion as well. Now we're gathering additional information. This is an automated process that will populate the various tabs across the bottom of our migration tool. So we should be able to see the various services that are listed in here. We've automatically selected those, but we display this information to ensure that the application owner can verify and see if there's anything that's missing. There may be an account in particular that they know needs to come across, and they can verify that we've automatically selected that information for the migration process. Once we've done that, we can do some additional viewing into the actual source server itself, view the various files that are resident on there, and then we'll begin our pre-population process. So again, this process is going through and capturing all of the information related to the application set that we have selected, dependencies, including the file structure, the files contained within that folder structure rather, services, the registry information, any other information that we can glean from the selections that we've made. Once that process completes, then we're ready to move into the next stage. This part here, unfortunately, is not the easiest part to get through because it can be lengthy if the application size is large. But we have sped up our migration window here to ease that process, and we're zipping right through it here. Once that's complete, you can see we've brought over a number of different items here, and we'll move into, again, the next phase of the migration, which is the exercise phase, we call it. To do that, we'll have to dock our container, but actually we'll need to verify the credentials and input that information if we had specific credentials associated to the services that we weren't able to capture and bring across. Now that we've entered that information, we can dock the container. That's a process of bringing the container to life, really making sure that the application within the AppZero container is able to be integrated with the underlying OS, with AppZero acting as that go-between for the two different items, the underlying OS and the application itself. We'll begin to start the services associated with IIS, and then we'll roll through those. The process of starting the services can be a little bit lengthy because we're going through a check and verify stage at the same time. So every time a particular file is being called by a service or by a registry entry or by a previous file, AppZero is ensuring that that file is located in the destination server within our AppZero container. If it is not found, for whatever reason, we'll go back to the source machine and ask for that particular file and bring that file back to the destination server and a copy process. At that point, we also get a little bit greedy in that scenario, so we will see that if we've been to a folder asking for a particular file, we'll start copying the rest of those files at the same time. In that way, we're ensuring that we build out all of the application process and bring over all of the application's components themselves, right? So it's really like building a jigsaw puzzle. You start at the edges of the puzzle and continue to build inwards and see everything. So at this point here, we're actually going through a rehosting process to bring over all of the components associated with the SQL server itself. So this is one of the interesting ways that we are bringing over applications, is ensuring that the databases are rehosted correctly to reflect the new host name of the destination server itself, right? So it's a part of or learning process that we've gone through when we've been migrating hundreds and thousands of applications and learning the best way to process that whole application itself. So the rehosting process, pretty straightforward, but it does, again, it's a crucial requirement for SQL servers. Once that's completed, we'll be able to start the SQL services associated with SQL Server itself the same way that we start any other services associated with applications and as we've done with the IIS application itself. So again, those services can sometimes be a little bit slow as they're building out and starting because they're going through that check and verify process. But that's only a reflection of the services within the context of the container. Once they are moved to the destination server in the dissolve process, which we'll see momentarily, the application will continue to operate as expected on the as it was in the source machine itself, and as expected to be when as if you did a native installation. Now the process is a little bit slow because we do have to start these services one at a time and determine the order in which to start them. Occasionally we'll see that dependencies within the applications are seen automatically and we can, they will kick each other off. At this point we're actually opening the IIS manager that's resident from the destination server itself, and that's to verify that the web pools, etc., have been brought over correctly. It's interesting to note here is that what we've actually done is enable the correct new version of IIS. We're not bringing over the old version that was on the older server 2008, so I believe it's IIS 6 on that fella. We're actually using IIS 8 here because that's the version associated with the server 2012. So we'll actually, App 0 will actually enable IIS on that destination server. So again, we're going through making sure that we have the various web pools and the accounts associated with the application itself. And we're going to go through the same process here for SQL Server to ensure that everything is working correctly associated with that version of SQL. Should start up momentarily. Again, a little bit longer than would normally be the case because it is going through that check and verify process for each of the file components, pushing the components that, or associating the components that were part of the underlying OS. So if there's application DLLs versus OS DLLs, making sure that all of those work correctly. So we're just logging in, making sure that works okay. We are. So we see that the SQL Manager is displaying the information and the databases as we would expect it to. And we've verified that component is working and running correctly. What we'll do now is verify that the website is going to be working correctly. The way to do that, of course, is fire up our trusty Internet Explorer and browse to our website. Of course, we are going to localhost here because that is hosted locally on this server. We're moving it from the source to the destination. And again, this process a little bit long initially, only because we are going through, again, that check and verify process. So we've sped up that process for us just to save a little bit of time today. For anybody who's been familiar with having to install and utilize .NET Nuke in the test environment, they may be aware this is a little bit of a handful at times, but we'll make it work here. So we're going to log in real quick, and again verifying that we're authenticating not only through IIS using the correct accounts, but that we're connecting to the database itself. So we've gone through that verification. Everything is working as we would expect it to. We'll close down any of the components that we were bringing over. So again, the website, SQL management, which is, we had it open. The INET manager, again, we're removing that portion of things out of the picture, and we're going to go through an undock process. So similar to the docking process, this is obviously to remove the reliance and the visibility of the container from the underlying OS and have it just and it be the underlying OS plane, as it were. Now we're going through the dissolve process. So here we're actually going to push the components of the application set, so the INET manager, web pools, those accounts, SQL Server, its database, the accounts, etc., directly to the underlying OS and have this be a working, running copy of everything that was resident on that source machine, migrated smoothly and efficiently to the destination server. So in this case, we can verify in our settings menu that we see SQL Server is there, the management tool is there. We can actually fire this guy up. And we can see here it is starting faster than we would we saw within the context of our container. So it's the same kind of speed that we were seeing on the local source machine, that older 2008 box. And now we're up and running. We're going to test the website as well. Oh, yes. I believe we did have one small issue here, and that was because in the midst of our migration, even the best of us have a little bit of escaping of our standardized processes. We forgot to start the SQL services associated with the SQL Server. So we're just going through and starting those fellows there now. And of course, you can see these guys are starting and running as we would expect them to. There's no dependency on App0 here at all. They're running as we would expect them to. And we're even going to start the INET publisher as well. It's working. And the IIS services. Perfect. Now we should be able to log into our database nice and quick. Verifying that everything is here as we expect it to, just going through a quick test. And we can verify that our local host is going to provide us the information we were expecting as well. Again, the only downside here is that the .NET Nuke is not necessarily the fastest and friendliest, but we can see that it is up and running as we expected to. Same configuration that we had on that source machine is what we have on our destination server. So that brings that to an end, and I will switch back. Now that we've seen how easy it can be, we do have some comparison information. So App0 went head-to-head with process of installing manually the same configurations that were on a source machine. So we did it across a few different application sets. We did a very easy WordPress, which I think we can all agree is not too difficult to install with the default configuration. We went through that same IIS SQL .NET Nuke configuration. And we also looked for a set of manual media. We had no media, and we were trying to replicate an application which I don't recall off the top of my head in a manual effort. And you can see in every instance, App0 is significantly faster than trying to migrate any application manually, recreating the configurations associated with the application, all of the preferences, accounts, migrating all of the data, all of the small things that kind of get lost over time when applications are handed across multiple administrators. This is where App0 really gains, is in the efficiency of man-hour time savings. Being able to bring all of that across. I hope that's what you have seen today with our migration. One other thing that I want to mention before we close off and move to any questions that you folks have, and I think that you've been efficiently filling out our questions dialog box, is that our next event will be in Toronto. It is the App0 Technology Showcase Conference. So we're doing something a little bit different here. Instead of a webinar, we'll be doing a live in person. You'll get to see the men and women behind the microphone here at App0. It will be a small meet at the Royal Ontario Museum. where you'll have a chance to discuss and meet past and present clients of AppZero. Some other industry experts will be on hand to talk about migrations. And there will be a boat cruise in the evening as well to be able to enjoy the fine Toronto harbor fronts. So that is happening in September 19th and 20th. If you need more information and to register, you can click on that link there, and there is, you'll be able to find that on our website as well.
Scott, we have one question that's probably better answered verbally than typing.
Sure.
Related to handling of licenses, application licenses from the source machine, so SQL Server, for example, or other applications that may have a license requirement.
Absolutely. So it's a fair question, good question. We do come across that from time to time. Applications are licensed in different ways. Our best case scenario is no license. That's a rarity. Next case would be an application that hits out to a licensing server. As long as the destination server has access to that licensing server, then we should be fine. Where the license is unknown or unable to be ported from the destination or from the source machine to the destination server, we may run into some trouble there. May have to contact the vendor in order to renegotiate or get a new license. But that's really worst case scenario. I don't know if we see that too often. Usually we're able to bring the license from the source machine to the destination server. But it is something to take into account when you're choosing an application and qualifying an application for use as an AppZero migration use case, or even if you're attempting to do a manual migration as well, you have to take licensing into consideration.
And again, another question better answered this way than through the chat window is, do we upgrade from SQL Server 2005 to 2012?
So great question here, and I think we have the right people to answer it in this room.
Absolutely.
We have a couple different approaches. Our current approach is the same as every other application. We're migrating like to like. So as you saw in the demonstration today, you ended up with SQL Server 2005 on the newer server, the 2012 server. From there, we've been able to, in the past with a fair amount of ease, upgrade the SQL versioning after we've gone through the dissolve process and be able to go through an upgrade of SQL there. However, Mark, I'll turn it back to you because we have some exciting news on the horizon that you could share with regards to SQL migration.
Yeah, so in the fall, we will have functionality in place. We're going through some alpha testing right now with it, and we call it SQL in place migrations. If you've had some experience with AppZero, particularly migrating on the IIS side, we don't actually migrate any of the components of IIS since it's built into the OS. We move the configuration, websites, and web tools and applications related to it, and then use the latest and greatest version of IIS on the destination in order to serve those pages. SQL Server, we have the ability to move the binaries, the executables, so you end up taking 2005 to the destination. Using SQL in place, you would pre-install SQL Server 2012, and then using a slightly different methodology than was just demoed by Scott, we would do a SQL in place upgrade that would take all the database files, configuration, any reports, depending on which components were installed on the source machine, and then reconfigure the 2012 already installed SQL Server to use those components. So at the end of the day, after you finish the migration and the dissolve, you would have a fully migrated 2005 database now running on 2012.
Excellent. So that's all really great news to be coming down the pipe. And you said fall, correct?
Yep.
All right. So look forward to that on the horizon, perhaps a topic we can talk about in Toronto.
Absolutely.
Any other questions in there that you weren't able to answer, or something that's of interest maybe we want to talk about to the crowd?
Just while I was talking there, I want to see what came in. There was a question about the prerequisites for the migration. So on our website, docs.appzero.com, there is an Are You Ready to Migrate guide, and that would walk you through all the prerequisites for migrations. Some of them don't apply in all situations, like web deploy is not relevant unless you're actually migrating IIS, and some of the other cross-domain or instances that we have in that document don't apply in every case. But it will give you an idea of the overall preparation that you need to do and what requirements need to be met for a successful migration. Okay, sorry, I'm still scrolling through.
No problem. I'm sure the questions are coming in hard and fast.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We would love to consider our next customer appreciation meeting in Florida.
Florida would be a good case. If we had, yeah, Aruba would be good too. Anywhere, fantastic. Yeah, that would be great for sure.
Yeah, at least it's not snowing in Toronto.
That's right. It will be in September. We could have some playoff baseball, maybe some hockey happening at the same time. So.
And a question about, do we have VMware templates with AppZero already installed? We do not. It's actually a fairly easy install. It's fairly quick. It's probably less than 5 minutes end to end. We are looking at doing pre-baked images in Amazon and Azure, so stay tuned to our Twitter and notification email, and we'll let you know when that is available. And the last one, yes, licenses are valid for 1 year, and there are renewal options. Once it's dissolved, there are no license requirements from the AppZero side.
Correct.
So if you dissolve it before the year period, then there is no extension needed for the license. It's now natively installed as if, and you can uninstall AppZero at that point in time.
All right.
And I think that pretty much answers all the questions I can see so far that I haven't answered via the chat window.
Excellent. So I think we've used up the time that we had allocated. Hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, everyone learned a little something about AppZero. If you have additional questions, we can contact us through, I think it's info@appzero.com is probably the best case, unless you're really interested in purchasing, in which case that would be sales@appzero.com. We'll be able to hook you up there. And I believe we're going to make an attempt to have this webinar published, and that information will be going out over social media shortly as well. Perfect. Thanks, everyone, for attending, and have yourselves a good day.